Good afternoon,
Do it now.
everyone,
Let's
and
watch
welcome.
together.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we shall watch together.
Okay.
Sorry, that was me. I was
afternoon,
muting my phone.
That's okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another installment of Council of the One's Babylon 5 review. And today we are continuing our review of Babylon 5 Season 2, and I've got my fellow council members, Fiona Wolf, Classic Comics, and Mountains of Elysium. Guys, it's great to see y'all again. Thank y'all for being here. Hope you're having a groovy Babylon 5 fantastic day. So, that all being said, let's go ahead and get started. Spider in a Web. And this is one of the few times where the title of the episode actually is spoken in the episode. Of course, it's at the very bloody end, but it still works. So, guys, how y'all? Let's jump in because I know Fiona's gonna have to leave in a little bit, but so don't want her to miss out on anything. Where do y'all want to begin with this episode?
Why don't we let Fiona start since she's gonna have limited time?
Sure.
Well,
yeah.
I guess the biggest thing is I wish Sheridan would have kept his angle of finding all these little conspiracies. But if I remember correctly, even JMS's commentary was like we couldn't use that Bureau 13 stuff anymore because like some sort of copyright.
Mhm.
But that's still a fun aspect of his character. I wish they would have kept more.
They should have done what Deep Space Nine did when they took the idea and made it 31.
Section 31, right?
Saying nothing. Saying nothing more.
Oh
Yeah.
man.
Bureau 13, Section 31. Hmm.
Filled to the brim with dead Psychor people. Mhm.
Yeah. Lots and lots of dead Psychor people that aren't actually dead. And if they're not dead, they're doing an awful good job at not looking dead. So.
And besides, this is one of the few episodes where you get to see the destroyed part of Earth. Well, like from what was it supposed to be? San Francisco or something?
San Diego.
Yeah, the San Diego wasteland is what it's called. And geez.
Yeah.
I know there was in the first season there was at one point Sinclair mentioned that it was bombed by terrorists. I guess they nuked it.
Yeah,
or something.
Because now that I think about it, like B5, you see a bunch of different stuff with the station and other races, but you don't see too much of futuristic Earth too often, like other parts of it. So that was an interesting thing to see.
Yeah, totally.
And they had Morgan Clark in the background, like Santiago was a good man. Morgan Clark, you're a liar.
Morgan Clark, you smell like cheese. You look like a butt. I'm not talking about your actual posterior.
Yeah, like that little clip where you see them putting the Free Mars guy back together, Abel Horn. It's like showing a little bit of how Morgan Clark's going to go with using Psychor as a weapon, really.
Yep, pretty much.
It's like, oh my God, Talia, you're kind of rooting for the wrong team, and this will become very much more apparent later on in the season. Oh no.
Yeah, because, well, remember, Cora's mother, Cora's father.
Yep.
You
blew my cover.
Cora's a creepy uncle. Sorry.
Oh, man.
I think
And somebody just got triggered.
At this stage, there was supposed to be two controls, I think, because when they were mentioning control, they used the term he. So, and at the time, JMS had the idea of having two, but I think that was just dropped after this episode.
It might have been brought back up had the Talia stayed on the show, because they were building up things to where I'm guessing there was probably going to be a whole thing where Garibaldi and Ivanova probably get her out of Psychor and reestablish her old personality or something. This was kind of like one of those build-ups because it's supposed to show Talia's kind of humanity because she hates what Psychor does and it makes her very worried.
Yeah, this kind of is one of the first real clear indications that Psychor is really dirty. They're not just arrogant and jerks. They're up to some very sinister things. I think the Bureau 13 was probably going to be kind of a joint operation between the Clark administration and Psychor.
Mhm.
So I mean, the plot I think probably was able to go on without them being mentioned specifically.
Yeah.
I think.
Go ahead,
Sorry.
Elysium, please.
I think in universe they were supposed to be subsumed into the Night Watch, and initially Night 1 and Night 2 from season 1 were part of Bureau 13, but after the issue with the tabletop game, they dropped the term and said, yeah, a lot of things were under Clark administration. All those little organizations were pulled into one, working together.
Yeah, because Straczynski didn't like some of the stuff that Mongoose was doing, like adding to the lore and everything. But honestly, I think it was kind of a form of flattery because they really enjoyed the setting. So,
yeah, I wish he had let that game keep going.
Yeah, it had a lot of interesting aspects.
Unfortunately, I never got to play the tabletop game, so that stuff I'm not aware of, but it's okay. Honestly, I liked the interaction between Talia and Garibaldi in this episode. It seems much more natural, particularly right after the first attack, and he's like, you're traumatized. I'm standing here being a Yetz," and she's like, "Apology accepted." And honestly, I liked the scenes between Garibaldi and Talia because it kind of breaks down the whole dynamic that they had like in the first season, and it really everybody knows that a lot of people on the station don't trust Psychor, particularly Garibaldi, and very much as obviously in Ivanova. And I enjoyed their time together. I enjoyed the conversations that they had and everything. We get some more backstory on Garibaldi, particularly about his dad, the fact that his dad was in law enforcement or in security or whatever. So,
oh yeah, I mean, and I like that one quip that he's like, "What's that word mean? Badinage?"
Badinage.
Yeah. And what's funny is the actual actor and actress were married for a short time, like a year or two.
Mm-hmm. And just very quickly to the chat, Pixelate and Colin B. Smith. Colin, you just got here. We just got started, so thank you for coming in, bud. We've missed you. Glad you could pop in or anything. So, but yeah, getting into the episode a little more properly, we get a couple of cameos and everything from some fairly well-known big screen actors. The gentleman that played Taro Asogi, we remember him as Mr. Nakatomi from Die Hard, and of course, one of the B queens of the 70s and 80s, Adriana Barbeau, who was the one-time spouse of John Carpenter, one of my favorite directors. Oh.
And Michael Beck also.
Yeah, Michael Beck. Yeah, thank you. Classics, I appreciate. Yeah, thank you for remembering. I don't remember anything he's been in, but honestly, the main
thing I think of is he was in The Warriors. If you ever saw that, the movie from the late 70s about street gangs and all.
Yeah, I've never seen The Warriors. I probably need to at some point.
Yeah, he had kind of a brief window where he was kind of a hot name, kind of in the late 70s, early 80s for a few years. B5's pretty good at digging up, actors who were basically hadn't worked in years and giving them work, probably because they were cheap.
And a certain someone started his first show in this one. Was it Jeff Conway?
Yes, Zach Allen had his first. It's a brief introduction, but he's there, and hey, Zach, good to finally see you.
Speaking of guys who hadn't worked in a while.
Oh yeah, because I think his last biggest thing before this started up was like Grease and stuff, or what, Cheers and things. Wasn't he in that one too?
Well, he was on Taxi.
That's right.
for several years. And I don't know, after that, he kind of, I don't know, he had drug problems. So I think that probably kind of torpedoed his career.
Unfortunately, yeah. So, but I really like this. I like this story and everything, or the arc in this episode talking about the whole idea of Mars getting freed and it going about in a different way. So I want y'all's thoughts on that, particularly you, Fiona, before you have to leave us.
Well, but biggest thing, it does set up a few pointers of how Clark is already biting at the bit to get Mars under control, and that'll flare up a lot later in the season. But it also shows that the guy's actively messing around with corporations to make sure Mars can't be free. So it's like, dang, dude, you're basically trying to break all the eggs and claw them towards Earth automatically.
Yep, when we meet some of the other Mars corporates later on in season 4, was it William Edgars? You see just how corrupt those people are. And I'd love to have seen more. It's one of the things I like about Babylon 5. No one group is completely vilified or not. You see good people in Psi Corps and you see the negative. There's good corporate leaders like Taro Sogi. That was an amazing character, and I loved his idea of trying to bring peaceful change, willing to take the short-term hit for long-term gain. Where you also see the other side.
Yeah, this episode really kind of sets up, it's a big step towards the whole conflict with Earth that comes later, and all the conflict with Psi Corps that comes along later as well.
Yeah, and Colin P. Smith brings up a couple of interesting points. One about the actor who played Abel Horn, Michael Beck, was also in a movie where he played someone who had been cryogenically frozen and then revived. And then, of course, he brings up Jeff Conway as Zach Ellen. He remembers him in War Without End, but it was he came aboard just before Sinclair left. So it's kind of like the Chekhov effect from Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan. Yeah, Chekhov was on the ship, but we never saw him on screen when Khan and his bunch were there in Space Seed. So
it's a good way to kind of hand wave some things to where a character doesn't have to be brought up to speed. They were already there, so you don't have to fill in gaps for them.
Exactly. Yeah. Totally. Well, Fiona, what else about this episode do you want to talk about before you have to bounce?
Sheridan and Garibaldi's conversation of like how to find this interesting radiation element to find Horn, and he's like, okay, Mr. Wizard. It's like it showcases that like event like Sheridan and Garibaldi's relationship developing where they're genuinely becoming friends, which will kick them in the butt later when Garibaldi's made into a double agent in a way. Because he antagonizes Bester and everything else related to Bester constantly. So that's why Garibaldi was targeted later. Because Bester never forgets.
No, Bester's a manipulative, vindictive little crapper.
But even the book goes into the fact that his fist unclenches only after he dies. Like the whole time he's alive, that fist stays clenched, and it actually the Psi Corps books go into the reason why Bester's hand is like that most times. It's like damn man, oof, that's some spicy origins there, Mr. Bester. Ouch. And even Talia's ancestors were mentioned in that stuff, but it still just shows just how messed up Psi Corps is for people who generally buy into it versus people that don't. And Talia is slowly becoming the person that doesn't buy into it.
Yeah, it's going to take her a little while, but she gets there, and just when she gets there, well, she gets the rug pulled out from underneath her. And we find out that she was actually a double agent the whole freaking time. But she didn't know it, and they didn't know it. Nobody knew it. Nobody knew anything.
Yep. it's still like, I hopefully when I pick up this encyclopedia, maybe it'll shed more light on what would have happened had she stayed on the show, because I think I would have found that really interesting. The Mongoose books actually did go into that a little bit, but it's more like Ivanova remembering Talia and Garibaldi also. Yeah, it's like dang man, that's sad.
Well, I think part of the original plan was that there was a Straczynski, I think, wanted to have eventually a relationship, a lesbian relationship between Ivanova and Talia. Of course, originally I think it was going to be Lita and Lieutenant Commander Fukushima. I don't remember her first name, but that was going to be part of it. Is that the Ivanova character was going to have this hatred for telepaths, but then she would fall for this female telepath and think, well, I guess telepaths aren't so bad, and then she'd be revealed as this double agent, which would be a big kind of heartbreak for her.
Mm-hmm. And just for record and everything, Takashima's first name was Laurel.
Was it Laurel? Okay.
Yeah, it was Laurel Takashima. So, yeah, I didn't really touch on that whole matter when I did my character dissection or discussion of Ivanova, but I think that might have been an interesting thing to go down that rabbit hole of, well, what would that have looked like? Because except for maybe Buffy the Vampire Slayer, we didn't have an on-screen same-sex relationship. So, and then of course, we have the whole issue of Ivanova and Marcus Cole and everything. So that's a whole other ball of wax in and of itself. But trying to.
Well, now that I think about it, Ivanova does really have bad luck in that department. That the one guy that turned out to be part of the Earth, first type of category, it's like, man. Like a lot of the romances she knew, all of them ended up kind of bad in some way. It's like, oh God, poor Ivanova. Oh,
yeah, she was unlucky at love, that's for sure.
Oh. Yep. Oh man, I mean, I guess they really wanted to go the Russian route with her, at least when it came to that. Like, she got her happy moments, but eventually Straczynski did do that incurable romantic serial, like later on in one of the Babylon 5 magazines. I guess I can link this thing below before I have to skedaddles. But yeah, she eventually got to get together with Marcus, but like a different version of her. From like a memory box, basically put into a person again. It's like, oh boy.
And this was also, I think, is an interesting episode because it's the first time we kind of see real kind of friction between Sheridan and EarthGov, where he's kind of pushing back on the things they expect him to do and the role they expect him to serve. And we also learn that he's actually known that there's something rotten going on in the government for a while, which I think kind of helped set him up for, breaking away from Earth later on.
And that's important to establish because the guy is the ultimate rebel later on when Drawl says, oh, your Alliance of Light against your own government? I see.
Yeah. And sorry about that, guys. It's my small technical difficulty. I'm assuming you were talking about Sheridan and him starting to dig up he collects secrets, as he likes to say. So
yes, and a little bit like his first pushback against EarthGov because he knows something ugly is coming down the pike and he don't like it.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much.
I did like his comment, just as a small aside. It's good to be the captain, when he just threw all the stuff onto Ivanova.
You ever get
on the way?
You ever get the feeling that was a wink and a nod to Mel Brooks? It's good to be the king.
Probably.
A little.
Well, Straczynski was a man of taste, so.
Well, I will see everybody later because now I gotta go pay some bills and make monies.
All right. You take care, Finn, and we'll
Take
talk
care.
to you
God
later.
bless.
Yep. See ya.
Bye bye.
So, all right, fellas. Where else do we want to go from here on this episode?
Well, I suppose we could look into the idea of the experiments that the ArtGov were
absolutely.
doing. The
Mhm.
idea that was horrific, to keep somebody trapped at the moment of their death, to control them, living it over and over. That's just messed up.
Yeah, that would be awful.
Yeah, because obviously we've become technologically advanced enough to where we can have cybernetics plugged into people's heads, but unfortunately it screws with people's heads, which just proves we're not as good as the Borg. At least not in Babylon 5, or at least not as good as some other races are able to do. I mean, I think if I remember in the Deathwalker episode, one of the aliens mentions that what's her face, Deathwalker, and everything actually put a machine in a alien's a relative's head just to see what would happen to it.
And honestly, one of the things that is messed up, we already know that even outside of Psychor, they're able to wipe people's minds and implant new personalities. So they could have just done that with these sleeper agents, but they did something completely messed up, just almost to torture them.
Yeah.
And yeah, it does show that a lot of what's going on, the Clark faction on Earth have been there in the background all along, and they're more than willing to do terrible things to their own people. And what they would have done to the universe at large, they would have become the new, what is it, the Dilgar.
Pretty much, yeah. So, and very quickly to the chat, Colin. Unfortunately, I never got a chance to review or to read the comics, so unless I can get my hands on copies, which from what I hear is exceedingly difficult, probably not. So,
Yes.
so, yeah, this whole idea of the efficacy of putting technology into human bodies, we're kind of tinkering with that now, but it's not in terms of a person's mental faculties. It's more to the point of like replacing missing limbs and so on. So, but yeah, honestly, you almost get the impression that Clark was somehow involved in the Dilgar War, maybe. Although he's a little pudgy, but regardless. You ever get the feeling that maybe he got his hands on some reports or anything saying what the Dilgar were doing to the other races or what have you?
And that's what
yes.
And that's what inspired some of these experiments.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's possible. I don't remember ever reading anything about that, but it would fit.
One of the terrible things is even when you do things for good reasons, like we're doing now, trying to help people with new limbs, reestablish artificial spinal columns, all of these things, helping people think with computers. There will be somebody who will say, how can I use that for my benefit? The type of Clark that is in our society.
Mm-hmm.
And anything can be used for good or bad means. It's like, it's weapons don't kill people, people kill people.
Exactly. And Colin, thank you. I honestly wasn't aware of that, so I'll definitely look into it at some point. So appreciate that very much. And one of the other things that I enjoyed about this episode was delving a little more into the whole business or corporate world of B5 or anything in particular, just how much control or how much influence corporations have in the B5 universe. I know we got a little bit of that in season 1, but we really get a big chunk of it here in season 2. The fact that an entire corporation founded by one guy is wanting to essentially transform Mars into a free world and do it through economics rather than through terrorism and violence. So, fellas, your thoughts on that?
Well, when the Expanse first came on, one of the things I thought about it was that I thought that it's kind of like what the Babylon 5 setting would be before humans had met aliens.
Mm-hmm.
With the kind of the way it's set up with, Earth is sort of overbearing Earth government, Mars, which is trying to be sort of independent. And then I guess you would have the Belters or Spacers or whatever you'd want to call them. But the growth of the corporate power is obviously, and you see that a lot in science fiction. I don't know when it started, maybe with Blade Runner is kind of the first one I remember really kind of doing that in a big way, where corporations have basically just kind of run everything.
Yeah, totally. Because you look at the world of Blade Runner, the Tyrell Corporation has got their fingers in practically everything, and both of you probably know this as well as I have. Harlan Ellison was a conceptual consultant or producer on this series extensively. And Harlan Ellison was one of the really big minds in sci-fi writing and in world shaping and everything. And you get the impression that he has worked on stuff like this, and he's got this mindset. In the future, corporations are going to have more sway over politics and everything else under the sun. And we'll Maris speaking, I don't want to go down rabbit hole here. In a manner speaking, that's even kind of true today. So,
Harlan Ellison is actually in one episode of, I think it's season 3.
I think so. Yeah,
he's the voice of the artificial intelligence that is cantankerous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're Elysium. I think you're right.
But he appears as a psychop, and I think it's the one. I forget. I think it's in the 4th season. It's where they kind of give the background on what happened to Garibaldi while he was missing.
Oh,
he was taken by the Psi Corps, and there's a point where I think it's Bester's coming into some facility, and they've got Garibaldi, kind of unconscious on a gurney, and he walks up to another psychop, and it's Harlan Ellison, and he says, I forget what they say, but basically talk about mind wiping him or changing his personality or whatever. Mm-hmm. But that's Harlan Ellison that he's talking to.
Cool. Yeah.
I do know also in season 1 that episode with where the rabbi came to visit Ivanova. She was reading a book by Harlan Ellison.
Harlan Ellison, yes. I remember that.
It wasn't a real book. They did that so people who watched the show would go crazy looking for it.
Like, ooh, Harlan Ellison wrote another book? Okay, let's go find it. Crap, it doesn't even exist. It was just on the show.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's one of the themes of B5 that I've always enjoyed is the whole concept of corporations and government interacting with one another, and oftentimes corporations really do have a lot of sway, probably more so than they should. And I think in this episode in particular, that's very true, because you've got corporations that are putting pressure on senators, and the senators are putting pressure on Sheridan, and Sheridan is like, I just want to run my freaking station.
And so we do see good corporations and bad corporations. The IPX, I believe that's the one that Morden worked for, wasn't it?
Interplanetary Expeditions.
And Or was that the one that? Because I'm trying to remember which one Katrin Sakai worked for. Because they seemed like a decent corporation. They were so happy to give her the money she found for finding the was it Quantium that made the jump gates.
Quantium 40.
Yeah, Quantium 40.
It's been a little while. I'd have to go back
Yes.
and refamiliarize myself with that. But yeah, this episode, honestly, has a lot going on in it, which I was really impressed with, as well as well balanced as it was. I mean,
sorry, technical difficulties again. Well,
I think they mentioned in this episode how they kind of explain why there aren't a lot of cyborgs running around. If you put chips into put computers into people's brains, basically it drives them crazy. And one of the things I remember noting when I first watched Babylon 5 back all those years ago was how little there was in terms of artificial intelligence or computers. Computers were really pretty much not that different than what we have now. And I know I didn't realize it or learn it until I read some of the B5 RPG material, but basically what is established in this universe is that artificial intelligence doesn't work. If you create a machine that has the equivalent of a human mind, it will invariably, they'll become psychotic. They always do, which is why they eventually banned artificial intelligence pretty much, which is probably part of Harlan Ellison's influence, because he wrote, I Have No Mouth, But I Must Scream. Yeah, which kind of was the first story to really play to that, and of course kind of served as the basis for Skynet.
And Garibaldi shoots him in that episode. That was entertaining.
Yes. Sorry about that, guys. Am I coming through okay?
You're coming through clear.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, good. All right. I'm going to get a new webcam or something. This is getting ridiculous.
Excellent. Colin P. Smith just confirmed.
Okay.
IPX.
Yeah, IPX. So thank you, Colin. Appreciate it, bud. So.
Yeah, IPX, right.
I just one aside, just as I remember it, this is the episode where they mention Ivanova threw the Psychor guy out the window on Io, and I assume you knew there was a pool below.
There was.
But it just goes to show she is coming around to Talia. Sorry to kind of make a segue, as I knew I'd forget if I didn't say it, that she's saying you can trust Talia, and for Ivanova to say that
means something.
Yes.
That very much means something, for the simple fact that up until now, she has not trusted Talia to any extent. She has not trusted anybody from Psychor because of what happened to her mother. So, this idea of trusting corporations and so on, that's a problem. But if you get to know a person, that's different. You can trust an individual, but you have to get to know them first. Whereas a corporation is faceless. I mean, for heaven's sake, it's called Psychor. It's Psy Corporation, in a manner of speaking.
And we do see good people in Psychor. They did help Garibaldi talk to, was it Lise?
Yeah, his former lover or girlfriend, or whatever way you want to put it. Yeah. And go ahead, Lysian, please.
I was just saying, and it was the same when you come to see the Edgar's Corporation later. They do seem to be pretty evil, but Garibaldi turns them into a really decent company who do a lot of good.
Yeah.
After season 4, from people who were actually working for them. Where he got, what did he get? The troublemakers, the guys who want to do things better, the guys who want to make a change and who are not afraid to stand up to it.
Yeah, essentially.
Which is a style of actually managers I like myself. I'm lucky. I've met people like Garibaldi who have had managers who do that. They want you to question. They want you to improve. And if you stand up to them, they will. If you're right, they'll back you. If you're wrong, they'll chew you, so you'll learn. Get your facts right.
Yeah, exactly. So, trying to think what else. What else about this episode do you guys want to mull over?
I don't know. I think we covered it pretty well.
One thing I'm thinking is how the EarthGov wanted to interfere in private affairs, and
Thank you. Yeah.
Sheridan refused. And I think this is the first point where they start to question Sheridan, because up until now, I think Clark felt he was their boy. But he just told him,
Right.
absolutely not, I will not. We're here. This station is supposed to be pretty much free. I'm not going to spy on a civilian organization or on a civilian group.
Yeah. Well, and you know, that's a really good point, because it does bring us to something I did want to discuss. It just popped in. Towards the end of the episode, Adrienne Barbeau's character, Amanda
Carter.
Amanda Carter, thank you. She's like, yeah, I was part of Free Mars once upon a time before they turned radical and violent. And it begs the question. You get into groups like this, like Free Mars, and you find out what they have been doing, or you find out what they originally were like. And she's like, they weren't this radical group, they weren't violent, they were trying to do things peacefully, peaceful protest, peaceful reform, almost like a peaceful revolution, in a manner of speaking. And then she meets Abel and everything, and he brings her in, and eventually the Free Mars group, they start to go down a road, and she's like, I can't be part of this anymore. And I thought, honestly, that was a very interesting dynamic and everything, because we're dealing with something very similar right now in our own country. We've got these two groups who are doing a lot of bad things. I'm going to try and keep this ambiguous because I don't want this stream to get taken down. But you sometimes wonder, these people that are in these groups, do they ever have that moment of pause and say, are we going too far? And do they try and speak up and say, hey guys, maybe we shouldn't go down this road, and maybe they just get shouted down by the rest of the unfortunately, the rest of the mob. And yes, Colin P. Smith, actually, I honestly, I didn't catch that myself. Maybe I should, because I did go see John Carter. So, good catch there, bud. Mountains, that's a good one, man. Grandfather was John Carter.
Yeah,
that's a possibility. Except there aren't any aliens on Mars. Well,
it was actually. Her grandfather was John Carter, the pilot of the first colony ship on Mars.
Oh yeah, okay, I got you. I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about like John Carter from the novel by Edgar Rice Burroughs, John Carter of Mars.
I was that's where the inspiration for the character came from, but
yeah,
that's the character's name.
I need to revoke my own nerd card. Colin, that might considering the pedigree of a lot of the people on this show and everything, their nerd pedigree or their geek pedigree, I would say it's not. I would imagine it was somewhat deliberate, kind of harkening back for those that really know their pop culture, their old pop culture, like John Carter and everything. So, but yeah, Straczynski and them, they did borrow bits and pieces here and there, but you know what? they're paying homage to the things that really were formative for them as they grew up or anything to become the creatives that they are now. Everybody, well, not everybody, because I've never read John Carter. I saw the movie. I actually kind of enjoyed the movie. I thought it was okay. Not the greatest thing ever. I thought it was okay. So, but that's another
Yeah, I
topic.
liked it too.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I've read
cool.
the books also.
You got a leg up on me, classic. So, but yeah, as you were saying, Elysium, this was kind of one of the first steps down the road for Sheridan to become the rebel captain, who's like, something stinks. I know it stinks. A lot of other people stinks. Yeah, Colin P., you're not the only one, bud. Believe me, you're not the only one on that one. Because I remember, crazy side story. Well, not crazy, but side story, real quick. Back when I was still speaking to my biological mother, I was like, "Hey, why don't we go take in a movie?" She's like, "Okay, let's play it at the theaters." And I was like, "What do you think of this John Carter movie?" She's like, "Seems interesting." So we went and saw it, and we got out, and she's like, "I liked that." I was like, "I did too." So, but yeah, getting back on topic here. Sheridan is eventually going to get to the point, we know this, where he's not going to put up with Earth Force and their nonsense anymore, or Earth Gov and their nonsense anymore. But this is just that first glimpse into the rebel John Sheridan, not the straight-laced one. And I will say this, in terms of trying to resolve the confrontation at the end and everything, where they're there in Carter's quarters with Talia and Abel Horn, he tried to play the diplomat. He tried to do the right thing and get the guy to to surrender so they could hopefully do something for him. But unfortunately, it didn't work. But I like the fact that Sheridan did try to play the negotiator here, or the diplomat, or whatever way you want to put it.
And I think that is one of the things that make him the one. As Delenn and Sinclair were before, they have warrior, worker, and religious contained within them, each of the three.
Yeah, very true. Well, fellas, is there anything else about this that you want to mull over and anything before we wrap up?
I don't have anything.
Oh, I think we've covered pretty much most of it. Okay. And the best thing about Babylon 5 is nothing is forgotten. Everything crops up again. So if there's anything we missed, unlike other franchises, things that happen matter.
Yes, Elysium, you're not wrong there, my friend. Well, to everybody that's in the chat, those of you that were participating, those of you who were lurking, I appreciate y'all being here. Colin P. Smith, we missed you, bud. Glad you could make it back for this one and everything. Just a couple of quick updates. I hate to do this to you all, I really do, but me and the missus are going to be getting together with our pastor and his wife for dinner Friday night, so I'm going to be moving my Clue watch party to Saturday. I'm reaching out to the people who are wanting to participate and everything, but more than likely Clue is going to be moved to Saturday. It'll still be at the same time at 7 p.m. I'm still working on my Star Wars fan fiction, so I'll probably have another installment for y'all next week. And for those of you that follow me on Twitter, the whole matter of Raya Mary Sue, I am taking up the gauntlet, and I'm going to present my argument for why Rey is and Mary Sue. And at some point, I have to get a hold of the Gold Man and see when we can have our debate. But I will keep you all updated on that whole situation. So, and I'm hoping for a lively and honestly, a simple debate. So, because
Honestly,
he seems like
I was about to say,
go ahead, Elysium.
so that'll be interesting. We've done our Star Wars thing, the Normie and the Jedi Master. It'll be interesting to see two Jedis ready, at peak of their ability, two masters fighting it out over Star Wars lore.
Yeah, very true. So thank you. Fellas, have you got anything that you want to plug for your channels before we close? If not, it's okay.
No.
We can go ahead and wrap up. And
No, I said I'm okay. I've released that video of the best crew and star in sci-fi last week, so I've already mentioned that. So apart from that, nothing.
Yeah, I don't have anything.
All right. Well, folks, thank you all for being here, and have a great week. And until next time, this is the Ambassadors signing off.